Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. The time 11:58 on the East Coast, and it is 8:58 on the West Coast. We do continue to follow this breaking news involving the trial for Daniel Penny. Now, the jury telling the judge that they could not reach a unanimous decision on count one of the charges against him in the subway chokehold trial. The judge is determining how to move forward and is deciding whether to give the jury an Allen charge. This is all developing at this hour, and this is just some of the video there of Daniel Penny as he entered into the courtroom. Now, I do want to bring in Jeremy Rosenthal. He is a trial attorney and has been joining us to discuss the case as it has been progressing. As always, Jeremy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, so first off, I know this is all just coming out right now, but can you explain to me what a deadlocked jury really is and what it means to say they are a hung jury here on that manslaughter charge?
The jury doesn't get to decide that they're hung. It's the judge that ultimately decides whether or not there's a hung jury. And that's because a jury trial is a massively expensive, you're not talking about just the person on trial. You're talking about all the witnesses, all the lawyers, all the jurors. In a trial like this, there are probably hundreds of people whose lives are implicated, and they want to get this thing to the finish line. So a lot of times what may happen is a jury may come out and they may say, Judge, we're not agreeing on this. We're not getting along. We're not able to decide this. And the judge almost always is going to send them back to keep deliberating. An Allen charge, or as we call it, a dynamite charge, is the court issuing a letter to the jury that says, we really need you guys to work harder towards a resolution. Stick to your guns. We want you to have, we brought you into this jury so we could hear your opinions, and your opinion matters. And we want you to be independent, but not really. We really need you to listen to the guy next to you because we want a verdict here. If the jury is hung, and if it comes back, if they keep going back to the judge and back to the judge and back to the judge and just saying, look, we are just not going to reach a verdict here, the judge could declare a mistrial, and then we do this all again down the road. That can happen, but again, at the first outset, it's not uncommon for a jury to throw this out there, and then we do get a verdict sometime later in the day. That can still happen.
So that's what I was going to ask you, is how often do you see the jury then return and say, okay, well, let's discuss it a little bit further and actually come to a unanimous decision of sorts?
It's common to see the Allen charge work. Juries hang all the time, but the Allen charge, you just don't know the dynamics of what's going on in the jury room. You could be looking at 11-1 split, where you've got one person who's in the corner with their arms folded and everybody shouting at them. You don't know if it's 7-5 or 6-6, or maybe there are some undecided people in there. These folks have been asking for exhibits. They've been asking for all types of things that are sort of all over the map. We don't know who in that room is asking for what as far as exhibits go. So we just don't know. And sometimes if you have maybe one or two holdouts, sometimes that Allen charge can push it over the top. But not always. Again, we just really have no way of knowing what's happening in that room right now.
How quick does that happen when you're talking about an Allen charge and they do go back? Is that an instant thing? Does the judge just kind of think about it for a few minutes and say, no, go back, or does it take a while?
It ought to be pretty quick. And the reason for that, anytime the judge is directly communicating with the jury, it's very precise and it's very curated. And the reason for that is because anything that the judge is communicating with the jury is a very big trigger point for a reversal on appeal. So you have to be very, very sterile when you communicate with the jury, very precise. And if you've seen one Allen charge, you've seen them all. So you don't really need to reinvent the wheel when you're writing your Allen charge. And it's going to have a few components in it that are going to be written as neutrally as possible. So an Allen charge is something that is really literally copy and paste, put the name of this case on the top, write it, sign it, let the lawyers in the courtroom look at it, give it to the panel, and then that's it. And sometimes the judge may bring the jury in to read the Allen charge to kind of pound the table. with it, or sometimes they just send it back. But again, I hate saying that this. It tells us what we already know, right? I mean, this deliberation has been several days already. That tells us that they're talking about a lot of things. When we were talking the other day, Josh, there's a lot of reasons to convict this guy, and there's a lot of reasons to acquit him. So it should be no shock that the jury's really struggling with this as well.
Does it give any sort of, I guess, indication when you do hear that there's a deadlocked jury, that they are deadlocked as of right now? Does that give an indication as to which way they are leaning?
It just really doesn't. I mean, you would hope to read something in there. Sometimes if the judge asks the panel to come back into the room to read it to them, you can sort of read facial expressions and you can try to see who's making eye contact, who's avoiding contact as far as the jurors are concerned. You can see a lot of times some frustrated body language. Sometimes if you ask the panel back into the room to read an exhibit, they'll look at each other, or they'll look at one person who may be the holdout, and you see body language. So it's not uncommon for the jurors to be frustrated with one another, and then you do sort of get a reading on that. It's unfortunate because you're really at that point, the evidence is closed and all the arguments are closed. So based on how that split is, you can't go back and argue to that same juror. Look, keep holding on here. You're right. We're going to win this if you keep in our corner. You can't quite do that, but you do get a better idea of where this breakdown may be.
When we talk about the declaration of a mistrial, for instance, how exactly does that work? Do we just go through everything all over again with the same witnesses, the same evidence, everything like that?
That's exactly right. Think of it like in terms of a baseball game. When you see the pitcher on the second at bat or the third at bat and the third go round, you have a better idea. So you can see that the lawyers are almost certainly going to plan differently the first time around and from the second time around, because they will have already seen the pitch, if you will, from the other side. A good example, too, that's in the news on another story is the Menendez brothers. They had initially a hung trial the first go round, and the second go round, the evidence that the judge allowed in that instance was quite different. First trial got hung. Second trial, the judge disallowed a lot of the defense evidence, and it resulted in a much quicker conviction, obviously. So you can count on the lawyers changing up their trial strategy, as you would, again, a batter facing a pitcher and taking a different approach based on the second go around. But you do start over from scratch, essentially, and then we have to do this all over again.
And reports are indicating that the defense is calling for a mistrial. That would be probably fairly standard.
You would think. I mean, if they get a mistrial every day that you are not convicted in a homicide case or a case like this, it's a win. I mean, part of you as a defense lawyer wants to push for that. You want to push and be done with it, and you want to push for a verdict. But at the same time, if you get a mistrial here and it's hung, then you can also go back to the prosecution and say, listen, this thing is just way too close. This is way too tight. Let's make some sort of a deal. My client has been through a lot already. You guys have been through a lot. Nobody wants to do this all again. So there is that temptation. And legally, I think the proper thing to do to preserve appeal is to ask for a mistrial at this point. But probably the judge refuses that, issues the Allen charge, and says, all right, everybody, we're going to be patient. We're going to let these guys go at it a little longer and see what we get.
And right now, I guess it's kind of just a waiting game to see what happens next, right?
That's right. And look, I've seen Allen charges where the jury comes back 20 minutes after the Allen charge is issued with a verdict. I've seen that happen. I've also seen it happen, obviously, frequently, where they come back and come back and come back. And after a while, they just certify that it's really futile. And the judge, like, are we really super sure here, guys? Okay, there's no way we're getting through this. Okay, then it's a mistrial. But it's the appropriate thing for the judge to take time and to try to push these jurors through these things, because again, they don't serve on juries every day. They're not professional jurors like the judge is a professional judge. We see this in the court system all the time, and we know that if you push, you're gonna get the case resolved at least a good percentage of the time. So there's no reason not to see if you just can't get this thing to the finish line.
All right. Jeremy Rosenthal, trial attorney. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us as we continue to follow this breaking news here, the jury deadlocked, so to speak. So, Jeremy, anything else you want to add before I let you go?
This is a real close case, and we talk about it all the time. It's emotions that drive these things, and people will, their emotions are how they see the facts. So we debate these things, and we look at the pros and the cons and all the evidence and what this witness means and what that witness means. But experience tells me that these folks probably got hooked and dug into whatever side that they're on whenever this trial started, just a long time ago. And this case has it all, like we talked about before, Josh. There's a lot of really bad evidence here for Mr. Penny. And there's also a lot of reasons to acquit him that his lawyers really pounded on too. So again, it just shouldn't be a shock to anybody that this is anybody's game. And there are trials out there that are pretty slam dunkish, right? Cases that you see that are on paper, cases where they have 48 witnesses who all say the same thing, cases that you're trying because the issue is this person going to get the death penalty or are they just going to get life in prison? This is not one of those cases. This thing really could go either way, and I think by now that should be clear to anybody.
All right. Jeremy Rosenthal, thank you so much for being here today with us as we follow this breaking news. We appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You too.